And I know, we're all feeling the pains of despair right now. Reaper, you were the chosen one! You were supposed to defeat the goats, not join them! What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch. Today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite edgelord, Reaper. Blizzard buffed him up with the intent to help combat the goats comp. This turned out to not even be close to the case, and I think the first week of Overwatch League showed why. And we're going to break down some examples of how that turns out. As well, if you're struggling with Reaper in some of your games, I think seeing how the pros react to him, even when still countering him with tank characters, is the remarkable thing. If you play Winston right, he can still counter Reaper. That's the crazy thing. And what's more, we really haven't seen a Reaper comp form. Instead, in some cases, he's been trialed inside of a goats comp. But I'm still not even that convinced personally. Okay, enough fun and games. Let's get down to some examples. We will show Reaper working, but for the most part, I feel like he didn't work at all. First and foremost has to be probably one of the most famous segments from week 1, Houston Outlaws up 2-0, 4 minutes on the clock, with a serious win condition. All they have to do is cap B, and they're gonna get full held at A, trying to push this Reaper into space. And here's the kicker. I don't even necessarily think Houston could have played this a lot better. Sure, some optimizations here or there, but Reaper on point A here is really bad. My assumption is they assumed they'd be able to get point A for free and then get him onto B, where Reaper's starting to look a lot better, and we'll explain why he's better on point B. But first, on point A, where he's really bad. I want you to notice something. Take a look at Toronto's Winston player. He's going to be countering the Reaper by outputting more damage and getting more value than the Reaper does. Winston counters Reaper? You're crazy, FREEDO. Look at this exchange though. Because the full goats comp can put bubbles, armor pack, heal orb, and everything onto the Winston, who cleaves onto the enemy and has his own bubble, he's able to get all the way up to almost 40% ult charge before Linkser is even at 20. Look at the health bars across the board of Houston Outlaws. They have to retreat. They're losing this poke battle despite having a character that's supposed to be able to hardcore punish the Winston. You simply can't with the amount of resources you can put into him. If the Winston plays well, he's going to dodge the Reaper and not let you hit any shots onto him. The next poke out, Outlaws make a good adjustment. They know they got to get them off this high ground here because they're losing this poke battle. They need to draw the fight onto the point. That's where the Reaper starts to look good. The problem is Reaper has to decide, do I go down to point where I want to be, or do I stay up top to protect my supports from this oncoming primal rage from Yakpun, who might not look like he's doing a lot, but zones out the supports entirely, so Reaper can't get a speed boost to go engage on the rest of the team and clean up the fight, even as they're at a positional advantage. So although they put bubble and all sorts of resources into Yakpun, he's able to 1v2 their backline, meaning that they have a big advantage on the front line, and Reaper doesn't really bring you back from a lost fight. This is a principle that I need to really stress. Reaper does almost nothing in a fair fight. He's strictly a win more type hero. Why? Well, because he just sort of stands there and you have to put resources into him, similar to Winston, but he has no movement or outplay potential in that way, so as long as you keep dodging him and parry backwards, he does far less than any tank would. And here's the crazy thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about Reaper, especially in light of the fact that many teams are trying to swap out D.Va to instead of put a Reaper in. At medium range, D.Va is way better for your poke game. Not only does she eat ults, damage coming in, and have more mobility, aka she's the one who can peel back to fly up to the high ground to protect your supports and shoot the Winston, she also does comparable damage overall. Yeah, it's only when you start to get to the extreme close range where you start to see an advantage of Reaper over D.Va. You might also say, well, Reaper can escape easier, but D.Va can fly all the time anyway, and is able to eat damage, so it's really tough. And in my previous meta discussion video, I described why Reaper is even worse than Brigitte at dealing damage. So at this point, I'm like, what hero does any of the 3-3 comp try to sub out to put Reaper in? I don't think you can do anybody. I'm really surprised teams haven't tried the Mei Reaper combo, because I think that's the only way where you can isolate a target, then get Reaper super close to it, then delete it. But even that probably just seems too hard to pull off. And you can see in most cases in the fight, if Reaper doesn't get to that extreme close range, well, the Defiant just have a massive advantage on them in medium range. As long as they dodge the extreme close range fight on the point and then re-engage with their cooldowns, the Reaper comp just simply has less resources to work with. And yeah, the kicker to all of this is Yakpun's Winston charges up up 2 Primal Rages before Linkser gets a single Death Blossom. And I don't think this is really his fault. Maybe the entire team needs to commit more in a Death Ball to force the Winston closer to the Reaper at all times, so Winston can't go peel off and fight your supports. And in this final fight, they do end up doing that, and the fight goes incredibly close, and you can see how Winston not only just dodges the Reaper shotguns, but can boop him out of the way, and the Defiant just simply don't have to take a fight with the Reaper when they don't want to, and then when they do want to, they have all their cooldowns, and oh yeah, they've got a self-destruct, which does get value, as opposed to the Death Blossom, which did nothing, unfortunately, and they spend 4 minutes to not get point A, which should more or less be a freebie at this point. And yeah, of course, tragically go on to lose this entire series when they're up 2-0. Crazy. Okay, now let's contrast a bit to Reaper actually working, kind of. 2 examples. One is going to be kind of weak, and the other one's a bit stronger, but also lucky. What these first examples show is a principle that I talked about with Zachary when I got a chance to interview him at the Overwatch League Arena.
Most of the times when we were playing teams that were playing Reaper, it felt more like their Reaper player was throwing the game, and then their entire rest of the team was just hard carrying him. I would say that there's merit to it with like nanos and stuff like that, and you can get value, but just playing traditional goats and getting better at it, it's probably just stronger. So he doesn't really get too much value, and he only gets value if he's running directly into people. But the ironic thing is, as much as you think that he should be shooting tanks, it feels like it's better if your Reaper player is just hardcore flanking and trying to one-shot a Zen player.
And as he explains it, whenever Reaper works, it basically requires the rest of the team to carry him, or I would also add, for the enemy to make a massive mistake, or essentially for the fight to already have been won. And that's okay in Overwatch, because there's a lot of times where the break of the fight isn't really where the struggle is. I mean, most of the time it is, but sometimes you actually do need a win more type character. When there's enemy respawns that are going to be coming out in a 2CP map, and you have secured the point, but you just have to be able to stop them from retaking with a bunch of cheesy stall characters, Reaper's your guy. He's amazing at that. But look at how many times the Dragons fail with this Reaper on attack, up against a comp that, frankly, he should be very good against. Brig and Ana, the number one thing you have to think about with Reaper is that he needs speed boost. And the problem is, especially up against goats, they have speed boost too. So anytime you try to speed amp at them to catch them out, to get your Reaper in extreme close range, well, they, if they have a good Lucio player, will be able to speed boost back, booping your Reaper away, just undoing that positional advantage you were attempting to go for. But even without speed boost, the Spark here are able to drop down defensive resources once these Reaper engages come in. Like, for example, if you just nano anything he wants to fight, even if it's a tank, he's going to have a lot of trouble winning that duel out once it's committed in close range. It's really only until Youngjin gets this magnificent flank off behind the Ana to 2-shot her that opens up everything, which I think at the end of the day is the key. Because Reaper engages are so obvious, you almost have to get Shadow Step to have some sick value for him to do anything. You have to be able to pop out from a corner when the enemy has no clue where you are to break out and 2-shot someone. We can see Surefour going onto point B of 2CP, getting away with the same shenanigans. Once he gets up in this extreme close range, then yeah, Reaper starts to look insane. His team is at a massive resource advantage as he starts to land these really chunky shots into the tanks, not getting the kills himself, but forcing Zarya back with low HP, then blasting the Rhine. They're on full retreat, and their team can clean up. But more times than not, this isn't the case, and it's going to be less of the case over time, in my opinion, because teams will wisen up to Reaper being forced to have to go on these flank maneuvers in order to close the distance with a surprise attack. That's what makes this whole thing kind of cheesy and unreliable, because if you go at him straight up, well, they're going to be able to maintain him and keep him at arm's length at all times. And this is overall why we see Mercy and quad DPS used to counter goats in the quad DPS setup. I think that has proven itself to be useful and viable on a lot of maps, but that's because it fights at a game that goats doesn't, in that it's just overloading on range damage, right? Whereas if you try to put Reaper into the goats brawl, well, they have all of the tools to sustain at close range and disengage with Lucio and all the other shenanigans that goats is good at. They're the absolute best close range brawling characters in the game. It's not like there's really anything Reaper synergizes with to make him better than those tanks, despite him doing a lot of damage to them. Because as we know, damage doesn't really do anything in Overwatch right now. It's how you interact with these tanking abilities and outplay them that's going to matter. Overall, I think I'm surprised we saw so much Reaper in week 1, and I think after after its performance looking quite abysmal most of the time, I would hope coaches see the same thing that I see and notice that it is not worth the risk at all. Because a lot of times, your Zarya is going to be getting faster Graviton Surge Charge than your Reaper. And this is what I mean by he's a win more character. It's like you need your other teammates to hit big initiation tools and set him up so much just so he can all of a sudden be on point and win more, when that's not the hardest part of the fight, right? The hardest part is the break of the fight, trying to get in, trying to command space, trying to get through chokes, and Reaper does almost nothing to help you with that fight. Sure, once you land all your tank ults, then he could be the nail in the coffin to secure the point win, but it takes a big grab from Fleta or a big minefield pile driver from Gaguri to crack open the defenses of these tanks so that Reaper can impose an advantage onto them. So what are some things that Blizzard could do with this information? Well, I think Reaper needs another ability, because the problem is this 50% lifesteal buff that he got, as I said at the time, was going to be a nightmare for lower ranks and not really do anything to GOATS comp. And I think that's even more proven true with pro teams attempting to run him. And I'm surprised we've even seen him at all. If we want him to be the answer to GOATS, he needs a way of interacting with all of this anti-damage that's in front of him, either with mobility or a new ability. If he had an alternate fire that shot a little different, that did more damage to shields or penetrated shields, I mean, that would end it all right away. Maybe not put the full damage through, but it might sound crazy for me to say an ability that can penetrate shields, but remember, Brigida's melee and Ryan's melee getting amped by Discord Orb already does that. That's sort of the problem. Melee damage has a bias above it, above even Reaper's shotguns, which is one of the easier abilities to use in the game anyway, which makes a problem. Another thing, if Reaper had like a very difficult to aim EMP grenade, similar to Sombra's EMP, yes, I know I'm suggesting put EMP on a cooldown. I'm insane. I don't actually think this would be a good thing, but that would be the type of thing that Reaper needs in order to actually make him good up against the GOATS comp, because he already was good at smashing away tanky bodies. It was professional level tank play that denies all damage and just avoids it entirely, so they just don't take any damage hardly ever, while still dealing range damage somehow. That makes Reaper look kind of pathetic, unfortunately. And you know what? I think we could see some justice for Reaper. I really want to see some buffs come into place that make Reaper more difficult to use, but more effective. Because the issue is, at lower ranks, if we just simply keep buffing his stats, he's already going to be more obnoxious than he already is, and it won't deal with the problems in front of him when going up against pro GOATS comps. So guys, let me know if you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and predictions on the Overwatch League matches. Hit us up on there with a follow. We love to interact with you guys. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.